She found a dying K9 German, shepherd with cancer, in a garage. Then she discovered something shocking. He was nothing but bones and sorrow when she found him, curled up in the corner of an abandoned garage. Too weak to lift his head, his K9 badge still dangling from his collar. His fur was matted, his ribs stuck out like broken wings, and his eyes, those once proud eyes, looked like they had already given up. Most people would have turned away. Most people would have assumed he was beyond saving. But not her. And when she leaned in to read the faded tag on his neck, she didn't just uncover his name, she uncovered a secret so shocking it would change everything she thought she knew about this dog, and about the people who had left him to die. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. It helps us bring more inspiring, real-life stories of loyalty, courage, and second chances, just like this one, straight to you. The first time Megan saw him, she wasn't even supposed to be there. It was a gray Sunday afternoon, and the clouds hung low like they were threatening to fall apart. Megan had just finished helping her elderly neighbor move furniture when she took a wrong turn heading back to her apartment. The streets in this forgotten part of town were lined with rusted fences and shuttered windows. Her GPS spun aimlessly. She sighed, turned the corner onto Bradbury Street, and that's when she saw it. A half-collapsed garage. Its wooden doors cracked open just enough to catch the eye. But what really caught her attention was the sound. A scraping like claws on concrete. Faint, barely audible, but something in her gut told her to stop. She parked and got out. The smell hit first, oil, mildew, and something else. Something dying. She pushed open the garage door slowly. It creaked with resistance. And there he was. Curled in a far corner behind an overturned workbench lay a German shepherd, large, emaciated, and still. His fur was filthy, tinged with dried blood and motor oil. One of his hind legs looked swollen. His ears twitched, but barely. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. He didn't even lift his head. Megan froze. The dog looked like he had been forgotten by the entire world, left to fade into the shadows of a place no one visited. Her first instinct was to call someone, animal control, a rescue center, anyone. But she stepped closer instead. The shepherd's eyes opened slowly. One was clouded over. The other, deep brown and filled with something Megan couldn't define, locked onto hers. She dropped to her knees. "It's okay," she whispered. "I'm not going to hurt you." The dog didn't flinch. He didn't move at all. Megan looked at his collar, which was almost hidden beneath matted fur. She reached for it gently, and that's when she saw it. A tarnished metal badge, worn, dented, but still unmistakable. K9 officer, Unit 73. Name, Axel. Her breath caught. He wasn't just a stray. He had once been someone. Megan acted quickly. She wrapped him in her car blanket, ignoring the filth and smell, and laid him gently across the back seat of her Prius. He let out a soft whine, but didn't resist. The local vet clinic was closed, but Dr. Miller, the old emergency vet who owed her a favor, answered her call and agreed to meet at the back entrance of the clinic in 15 minutes. When they arrived, Axel was barely breathing. "What happened to him?" Dr. Miller asked as he began examining the shepherd's frail body. "He's dehydrated, starving. Look at this swelling, could be a tumor." Megan swallowed hard. He was in an abandoned garage. He has a badge. He was a K9. Dr. Miller stopped. "You're kidding." "No. Axel, Unit 73. The vet's face shifted. "I'll run scans. X-rays. Blood work. But, Megan, don't get your hopes up. He's not just sick. He's dying." The hours blurred after that. Megan sat in the waiting room, coat still streaked with grime from the garage, hands trembling. She didn't know why this mattered so much. She didn't even own a dog. Her life was chaotic enough. 2 jobs, an apartment she could barely afford, and no family nearby. But Axel, something about him felt personal. Maybe it was the way he didn't resist help, the way he let her wrap him up without a sound. Maybe it was how his badge had pressed against her palm, like a final plea for dignity. Dr. Miller finally returned. He has late-stage bone cancer, he said, setting down a folder of scans. Multiple tumors, severe malnutrition, internal bleeding in one lung. I don't know how long he's had this, but he should have been treated months ago. Megan blinked, stunned. So someone knew? Someone definitely knew, the vet said, and they let him go. Her stomach twisted. He was retired, Miller added. See the tattoo on his ear? Standard ID for K9 units. You could track his handler through that code. Megan leaned forward. Can you give me the number? The vet hesitated. Why? He's dying. What are you hoping to find? Megan looked him dead in the eye. I want to know who left him there. I want to know who gave up on him. Later that night, Axel lay asleep on a heated pad in the clinic's recovery room, and slowly pushed fluids into his system. His breathing was shallow but steady. Megan sat beside him, reading the faded badge again. K9 Officer Axel, Unit 73. She had never felt rage like this. Who abandons a dog like this, let alone a working dog? Someone he trusted. Someone who wore the same badge. She took out her phone, entered the tattoo code Dr. Miller gave her, and began searching. Within 10 minutes, she found something she hadn't expected. A name. Sergeant Daniel Romer, retired. The accompanying article was nearly 2 years old. It showed a photo of Romer, graying but proud, standing beside Axel in full gear. The headline read, Beloved K9 retires after saving officer's life in hostage crisis. Megan stared at the screen. Something didn't add up. This dog had saved a life. Why had no one come to save his? And why did his former handler let him rot in the garage? Her hands tightened around her phone. Whatever had happened, whatever had gone wrong, she would find out, because Axel wasn't just some abandoned mutt. He had worn the badge, and someone had broken the oath to protect him. The following morning, Megan arrived at the clinic before sunrise. She hadn't slept. Her mind was too loud, her heart too restless. Something about Axel haunted her. The way he hadn't resisted her touch, the way his single working eye had followed her even while fading. Dogs didn't survive like that by accident. He had once trusted someone with his life. Now, someone had turned their back on his. Axel's breathing was more stable thanks to fluids and medication, but he still couldn't stand. His body trembled when Megan sat beside him. She stroked the back of his ear gently. He didn't move, but his tail shifted slightly. Barely a twitch, but enough to break her again. I'm not leaving you, she whispered. Whatever happened, we'll fix it. I promise. Dr. Miller stepped in an hour later, holding a folder. His face was tight. I made a few calls last night, he said. You're not going to like what I found. Try me. Sergeant Romer was forced into early retirement after a misconduct investigation. There's no official statement about what happened, record sealed, but the dog was removed from service the same year. That's when he disappeared. Megan's blood ran cold. They abandoned him when they abandoned him. Looks that way. She stood. Do you have an address? The vet hesitated. I pulled it from an old database. It might not be current. I'll take my chances. Romer's last known residence sat on the far edge of town, what used to be a proud suburban street, now faded by neglect. Paint peeled from porches. Grass grew long and unkempt. As Megan pulled up to the address, her chest tightened. She walked slowly to the door of a one-story ranch-style house and knocked. Nothing. She knocked again, harder. After a full minute, the door creaked open. An older man stood there in a stained undershirt and jeans, his hair grayer than the photo she'd seen, but the face was unmistakable. Hard lines, cold eyes. Yeah. Sergeant Romer? Not anymore, he said. Who's asking? Megan didn't flinch. My name is Megan. I found Axel. Silence. The air went still. Romer didn't blink. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do, she said firmly. Axel, K9 Unit 73. Your partner. He's alive. Barely. Found him half dead in an abandoned garage on Bradbury Street. I don't have a dog. Megan stepped forward. Don't lie to me. He still had his badge. He still had your name. Romer's expression didn't change. He looked past her like he couldn't stand to meet her eyes. You shouldn't have come here, he muttered. Why did you leave him? Her voice cracked. He trusted you. Romer's shoulders stiffened. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Guilt, pain, shame. You think I wanted this, he growled. You think I threw him out like garbage? Megan stared. You did. I lost everything, he snapped. My job, my pension, my house, my reputation. One complaint from a rookie, and suddenly I'm the villain. She stepped back, stunned. So you took out on him? His voice broke. They gave me two options. Turn him over for reassignment or euthanasia. He was already limping. They said he wouldn't pass the next medical eval. I couldn't hand him off. Not after what we'd been through. So you dumped him in a garage? No. Romer's voice boomed, then softened. I took him with me when I left the station. He stayed with me until the money ran out. I couldn't feed him. I couldn't pay a vet. He started losing weight. He had these lumps. He could have walked some days. And then one night, I just drove. I pulled into that garage, gave him a blanket, and told him I'd be back in the morning. Megan's throat tightened. But you didn't come back, she said. Romer shook his head, shame folding his shoulders. I couldn't. I was a coward. She stared at him, disgusted and heartbroken all at once. He waited for days, maybe weeks. I know. She stepped forward again. He's dying. You don't get to hide from that. You owe him. Romer looked away. I can't face him. Then you're even worse than I thought. She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. What do you want from me? He asked. I want you to look him in the eyes, she said. Just once, and tell him the truth. Back at the clinic, Axel lay curled in his recovery bed, half asleep when Megan walked in. But when Romer entered behind her, something changed. Axel opened his eye. His body stiffened. And then, painfully slowly, he tried to rise. Dr. Miller ran in. Easy, easy. But Axel forced himself up, trembling legs barely supporting his weight. His head turned toward the man in the doorway. No growl, no bark, just a stare that could have burned a hole through time. Romer stopped 2 steps inside. His hands shook. Hey, buddy, he whispered. Axel blinked. Romer took a step forward. I'm sorry. Axel lowered himself to the floor again, eyes locked on the man who had once been his world. Romer crouched down. I was broken, he said, voice hoarse. But you didn't deserve what I did. You were my only friend, my partner. I left you, and I have to live with that. A tear slid down his cheek. I should have come back. Axel didn't move, but his tail, just once, moved across the floor. Megan turned away, tears streaming silently. Dr. Miller wiped his eyes and whispered, That dog still remembers him. Romer visited every day after that. He brought chicken broth. He cleaned Axel's bedding. He sat on the floor with him and whispered stories from the old days, chases, busts, long night shifts in the cruiser. Axel never moved much, but he listened. He knew. Megan didn't forgive Romer right away, but she watched, and she saw something real in the man's grief, something no lie could cover. On the 7th day, Romer walked into the clinic and found Megan. Dr. Miller wasn't optimistic. He's old, weak. Full-body surgery will wreck what little strength he has left. You're buying him time, but it may cost him everything. Megan knew the risks. Romer did too. But Axel's tail wagged every time Romer entered the room now. He was eating, slowly. He had begun lifting his head to sounds, even reacting to Megan's voice with the occasional soft grunt. He hadn't barked yet. Not once. It was as if that part of him had been locked away with whatever he'd endured. Or maybe he was saving it for a reason no one understood yet. Romer knelt beside the recovery bed and looked him in the eye. "We've been through worse, haven't we, partner?" Axel blinked, and then, so faint it was almost imagined, he let out a breath that almost sounded like a sigh of agreement. The next morning, they went forward with the surgery. Megan waited through 4 agonizing hours. She sat on the cold bench outside the operating room, watching the red in procedure light flicker. Romer sat beside her, hands clasped tightly together, lips murmuring something Megan couldn't hear. Maybe it was prayer. Maybe it was regret. When Dr. Miller finally emerged, his surgical cap still on, the look on his face said everything. "He made it," the vet said, "but it was close. We removed 2 large tumors, drained a third, and cleaned his infected paw. He's going to need weeks of rest." Megan stood, barely holding in tears. "Can we see him?" Dr. Miller nodded. "He's sedated, but he's stable, and he's a fighter." Axel lay unconscious in a warm cage surrounded by wires and tubes. But he no longer looked like a creature abandoned to die. He looked like a soldier wounded in battle, resting, but not finished. Romer stood outside the glass and whispered, "I didn't deserve a second chance, but maybe he did." Megan looked at him. "You're right. He did. And so do you if you do this right." He nodded. "I will." The next week passed slowly. Axel didn't walk. He barely moved, but his eyes tracked everyone now. He listened when they spoke, when Romer rubbed the edge of his ear, something that used to come in patrol cars. Axel closed his eyes in peace. Every day, Megan brought him boiled chicken, hand-fed him bits, and cleaned his face with damp cloths. She found herself humming sometimes while she sat beside him. And one evening, while the radio played softly in the background, Axel did something unexpected. He whined. It wasn't a cry of pain. It was soft, questioning, directed at the front door. Then Megan realized it was a sound. The song. Johnny Cash. Ring of Fire. Romer used to play it in the cruiser every morning before shift. She turned the radio up. Axel let out another small whine. His paw twitched. Romer rushed in. "You remember that, huh?" And for the first time in weeks, Axel let out a short, low bark. Megan's heart nearly stopped. Romer knelt down, tears in his eyes. "That's my boy." One night, a thunderstorm rolled in. The clinic lost power briefly. The backup generators kicked in, but the whole building was filled with flashes of lightning and the dull, echoing boom of thunder. Megan rushed to Axel's room, heart racing. She knew some dogs panic during storms, especially those with trauma. Romer was already there, pacing. Inside the room, Axel was awake, but restless. His breathing was sharp. His tail beat erratically. His eyes darted from the window to the door. "He's panicking," Megan said. "We need to calm him down." Romer reached into the cage slowly. "Hey, easy, Ax. It's just rain." Another crack of thunder, and then Axel stood. No assistance, no harness, no lift, just stood. His legs shook violently. His front paw barely held weight, but he pushed up, lips pulled back in effort, and stood fully upright. Megan gasped, "Oh my God!" Romer knelt, speechless. Axel's head turned toward the window, then toward Romer, and then he barked. Once, loud, clear, commanding. Romer let out a broken laugh. "You're still in there." Dr. Miller entered just then, having heard the bark. His eyes widened. "Is he standing?" He got up, Megan said, tears falling freely. He stood on his own. Axel looked exhausted, like he'd collapse any second, but his chest was proud. He was telling them something. Romer whispered, "You didn't quit, not even now." And with a slow, shaky step, Axel walked to the edge of the cage. From that night on, the recovery was different. Axel began walking more, one painful step at a time. The staff built him a therapy harness. Megan and Romer took turns walking him in the courtyard, praising every movement like it was a miracle. And maybe it was he wasn't getting younger. He wasn't healing completely, but he was alive, and he wanted to be. One day, after a short walk, Romer sat beside Axel in the clinic's garden. I know what I did can't be erased, he said. But maybe I can write a better ending. He pulled a wrinkled envelope from his pocket. A foundation reached out. They heard about Axel. There's a program starting up for retired K9s. Therapy dogs for veterans. They want to use his story to teach what happens when we abandon our heroes, and how we don't have to. Megan sat beside them, listening. They want me to speak, too, he added, to tell the truth, to help other handlers understand the weight of what we carry. He looked at Axel. Would you be okay with that, buddy? Axel didn't move at first. Then he placed his paw on Romer's knee. Megan laughed softly. I think that's a yes. Romer looked up. He still forgives, even when we don't deserve it. That night, the three of them sat in the garden under stars. Axel rested his head on Megan's lap. Romer fed him small pieces of turkey jerky. They didn't talk much. They didn't have to. For the first time in a long time, there was nothing to fix, nothing to chase. Just a moment, just peace. And the dog who refused to give up on the humans who had once given up on him. The morning began with bird song and a soft breeze sweeping through the clinic's courtyard. Megan sat on the bench reading a book, while Axel dozed beside her, his body finally putting on weight, the sharp bones no longer so prominent beneath his thickening coat. Romer had just stepped inside to brew coffee when his phone rang. A known number. He hesitated, then answered. Sergeant Romer? He hadn't heard that title in a long time. Not respectfully, anyway. Yes, this is Special Agent Claire Jennings, Department of Justice. We received a report regarding K9 Axel, Unit 73. I believe he was once assigned to your command. Romer stood very still. Yes, that's correct. There's been a development. May I speak with you in person? It concerns a reopened investigation. Romer's grip tightened. Reopened? It's about Axel's last assignment before he disappeared. The agent arrived that afternoon. She was in her early 40s, smart suit, no nonsense. Megan watched through the window as she shook Romer's hand firmly and followed him to the small meeting room adjacent to the clinic lobby. Inside, Claire Jennings opened a tablet and placed it on the table. We've been reevaluating cold cases involving law enforcement misconduct. Axel's file came up. It's unusual. Romer's shoulders tensed. You're not reopening charges against me, are you? No, she said calmly. But we're reopening the case Axel helped crack, the Westfield hostage situation. Do you remember it? Romer's eyes darkened. I remember every second. Megan stood outside the door listening. The air around her thickened. That incident ended the careers of 3 people, Jennings continued, including yours. But the man Axel took down, Carlo Ruiz, just died in prison. Before his death, he confessed that the real leader of the operation was never caught. Romer's mouth went dry. That can't be. Jennings turned the tablet. Take a look. A surveillance still appeared. A grainy photo of a man slipping out the back of the warehouse moments before the police breach. We enhanced this image last week, she said, and we're 90% sure this man is still at large. We believe he may be connected to additional crimes involving K9 unit sabotage. Romer frowned. What do you mean, sabotage? Jennings looked him in the eye. There have been 3 cases in the last 5 years where K9 officers disappeared, retired under false medical grounds, or were inexplicably removed from service. Each time, the handler was later investigated or forced to resign. Romer leaned back. You think someone was targeting the dogs? Or using them as leverage? In your case, Axel may have been retired early because of falsified medical reports. There's a chance someone wanted him out to cover something up. Megan stepped in then. Are you saying Axel was removed on purpose? Jennings turned to her. You're the one who found him? She nodded. You saved more than a dog, the agent said. You may have saved the key witness to a crime that's still active. Later that evening, Megan, Romer, and Dr. Miller sat in the back room, trying to absorb the information. She said Axel might be the only proof that something deep was going on, Romer said, rubbing his temple. That Ruiz wasn't acting alone. Megan paced. But Axel can't testify. No, Romer replied, but there may be body cam footage, or data from his chip. Dr. Miller straightened. Wait, Axel is microchipped, and if he was on duty during that raid, there might be telemetry. What's that? Megan asked. GPS tracking movement logs. Some departments link chips to training collars or performance monitors. Romer stood. We need to get that chip read. Not by a clinic scanner. By someone with clearance. They called Jennings again. By morning, a federal tech team was at the clinic. Axel was calm as they scanned him. He didn't flinch, didn't resist. Megan sat on the floor with him the whole time, hand resting gently against his shoulder. The technician called out, We got something. It's encrypted. Looks like movement data from the night of the raid. Jennings stepped forward. Send it to me immediately. An hour later, she returned. You're not going to believe this, she said. Axel's chip pinged movement data after the breach. Romer frowned. He wasn't deployed after. We both were pulled. Exactly, but the chip says otherwise. Axel pursued someone. Megan's heart raced. You mean the guy in the photo? Jennings nodded. He followed the second suspect out the back door. Alone, likely against orders. We found records of barking in the audio logs, and then silence. Romer looked stunned. And no one ever followed up? No, because the next day, Axel was labeled medically unfit and removed from duty. His file was sealed. Yours too. Now we know why. Jennings placed a folder on the table. Inside was a copy of Axel's medical discharge form, with a forged signature. Romer stared at it. That's not the vet who examined him. No, it's a name that comes up in 2 other cases. The silence was heavy. They buried him, Romer said slowly. They didn't just retire him, they erased him. Megan stood. What happens now? Jennings looked at them both. Now, we use Axel to reopen the case, and we tell his story loudly. 2 weeks later, the press conference took place in front of the DOJ building in D.C. Axel stood beside Romer and Megan, weak but proud. His coat was brushed. His badge had been polished. A new harness had been made, fitted gently across his body with a patch that read, Honorably Retired, Unit 73. Reporters, flash cameras. Questions were shouted. But it wasn't the microphones that mattered. It was the crowd. People clapped. Others wiped tears. Veterans and police handlers lined the street, standing with their own dogs. Many saluted. When Romer stepped to the podium, his voice shook. This dog was left to die in a garage. Left behind not because of his age, but because someone needed him silent. But Axel did what heroes do. He survived. And now, his voice was... It had been 4 months since Megan found Axel in that garage. 4 months of surgeries, second chances, and revelations that shook even the highest floors of justice. Axel had not only survived, but helped expose a buried scandal that cost innocent K9s their futures. His bark had become the symbol of something bigger. And yet, no one knew how much time he had left. His cancer was back. The tumors had returned, this time spreading to his lungs. Dr. Miller sat them down in the clinic's garden one afternoon and delivered the news gently but clearly. We're out of miracles, he said. At most, a few weeks. But he's not in pain. He still wants to walk. He still eats. Let's not take that away from him. Megan turned her face to the wind to hide her tears. Romer just nodded and sat beside his old partner, fingers brushing Axel's thick fur. He goes on his terms, Romer said. No cold table. No vet light overhead. When he's ready, he'll tell us. And Axel? He simply wagged his tail and leaned his head against Romer's knee, as if to say, I'm still here. Axel's final days were quiet, but powerful. The DOJ made him an official honorary witness. Congress requested to include his story in a bill advocating lifelong care for retired service dogs. Megan even received calls from families wanting to adopt other forgotten K9s. But Axel, in his quiet way, stayed focused on what mattered most, the bond, every morning. He still pushed himself to stand and greet Megan when she entered. Every night, he rested his head against Romer's boot like he used to on long stakeouts. And then came the letter. Megan received it by certified mail one Thursday afternoon. The envelope bore the seal of the city of Edgewood, the town where Axel had once served. Inside was a single sheet. The city council has voted to posthumously award K9 Axel the Medal of Civic Honor for distinguished service and sacrifice. A ceremony will be held in his name. We invite those closest to him to attend. Megan looked at Romer, unsure whether to be angry or touched. They want to honor him now, she said, after they threw you both away. Romer didn't answer right away. He just stared at the page, then at Axel. No, he finally said. They're not honoring him now. He always deserved it. They're just finally catching up. He looked at her, eyes wet. He'll go, even if it's the last thing he does. The ceremony was held 2 weeks later. A crowd gathered on the green lawn outside Edgewood's new police headquarters. Flags flew at half-mast. Officers in uniform stood in rows. At the center stood a small stage. A single chair was reserved at the front for the guests of honor. Axel, Megan lifted him from the car with help from Romer. He was lighter now, almost featherweight in her arms. But his head was up, his ears alert. He knew something was happening. They carried him to the stage and gently laid him across a cushioned bed. The sun hit his coat in a way that made it gleam like it had years ago. The mayor stepped up to the podium. Today, we honor a dog who gave everything for the city and who reminded us that courage doesn't always wear uniform. It sometimes walks on 4 legs and never asks for thanks. The audience clapped. Megan looked around and saw people crying. Even officers who'd once turned their backs on Romer had tears in their eyes. When they called Axel's name, Romer lifted the medal and placed it gently around his neck. Axel lifted his head and barked, once, loud, steady, like thunder breaking the silence. The crowd erupted, and then Axel lay down slowly and rested his head on Romer's foot. He closed his eyes and never opened them again. Dr. Miller later confirmed what they already knew. His heart had stopped, peacefully, without struggle. He waited, Megan whispered as they stood beside his body in the stillness of the clinic later that evening. He chose that moment. Romer nodded, voice shaking. He died a hero, like he lived. The days that followed fell hollow. The clinic courtyard was too quiet. The city sent flowers. Veterans sent letters. Families shared stories of dogs they'd lost and dogs they'd never forget. And Axel's face appeared on the cover of National Canine magazine under the headline, "The Dog Who Barked for Justice." Romer didn't leave his house for a week. Megan, too, drifted. She went through the motions of work, emails, daily life. But it all felt muted until one morning, a small package arrived on her doorstep. No return address. Inside was a photo of Axel sitting tall during his prime, badge gleaming, tongue lolling, ears perked. And underneath it, a handwritten note. He saved more than lives. He saved legacies. Thank you for helping him finish his mission. There was no signature, just a badge number, K973. Months later, Megan and Romer stood together on a small plot of land outside town. A new foundation had been established, the Axel Sanctuary, a space dedicated to caring for retired and abandoned K9 officers until their last breath, with medical care, family companionship, and respect. The first dogs had arrived that week, an old bomb sniffer named Tank, a military veteran named Juno, and a skittish tracker from a border town named Buck. They all settled quietly on Axel's turf. There was even a sculpture, a full-size bronze of Axel sitting proudly, chest out, head high. A real badge, Axel's original, was embedded into the stone beneath. Megan placed fresh flowers there every Sunday. And Romer? He volunteered full-time, trained new handlers, helped with adoptions, told Axel's story to every child who came to visit. And sometimes, on cold nights, he swore he could still hear a low bark in the wind. Axel's story ended in peace. But what he started was only beginning. He reminded the world that loyalty doesn't expire. that those who serve, whether man or beast, deserve to be remembered until the end, and that even a dog dying in a dark garage can light a fire that reaches across the country. He left no will, no belongings, just a legacy, and it was enough. If this story moved you, remember, true courage doesn't ask for attention. It simply shows up. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share this video with someone who still believes that loyalty, second chances, and love can change everything.